Welcome back to Carneades.org. Today we're going to be continuing with our series, Dumbfounding Definitions, Dizzying Distinctions, and Diabolical Doctrines, a series sorting through some of the jargon of philosophy. In this video, we're going to be finishing up our mini-series on free will, looking at what is incompatibilism. Now, as much as compatibilism has come into vogue recently, incompatibilism has fought right back with challenges to the various forms of compatibilism which arise. Since different versions of incompatibilism, whether they're hard determinists or libertarians, don't share much except their denial of compatibilism, their denial of the claim that free will is something other than the ability to do otherwise. In this video, we're going to focus on objections to the three forms of compatibilism that we checked out in the last video. So if you're curious about either compatibilism and the arguments that we're going to be offering, definitely check out the previous video. But if you're curious for specific arguments for hard determinism or libertarianism, check out the earlier videos in this series on those positions. So, going back, the trilemma is as follows. The universe follows deterministic laws. Free will is the ability to do otherwise from those laws, and free will exists. You can't hold all three positions. Incompatibilists, who are what we're covering in this video, are any claims which argue that the second premise is true, that free will is in fact the ability to do otherwise. Now, before touching on the reasons to the responses, rather, to the compatibilist, here are some reasons that you might be an incompatibilist yourself. You might think that you have free will if you have control over doing something. That free will means having control over whether or not you can do something. You only have control over doing something if you could have not done it. If you could have not done it. If you had to do the thing, it doesn't seem that you really have control over doing it or not. Therefore, to have free will, you must be able to do otherwise, do something else other than what you actually did. Alternatively, you might think that to be free, you must be the ultimate source of an action. Nothing else caused you to take that action. You are the generator of that. It's not something, whether that's your biology, the particles in your brain, or the will of God that caused you to do that. In order to be free, you have to be the thing that caused you to do that action. Under either conception, determinism implies a lack of free will, and free will implies a non-deterministic universe. We'll take a look first at classical compatibilism, which claimed that you are free, that to be free you must be able to act on your desires unimpeded. There are a range of issues with this position. It seems that we often have desires which we are not the ultimate cause of. So I might desire cookies because I smell them baking and have been conditioned to like them, but not myself really been the cause of them. So there's a question of, am I really free in that I desire those cookies, or was I influenced because I smelled them and I've been conditioned to like cookies? Or that we're not able to do otherwise from. I might be unable to not desire to take a nap in the afternoon because I get tired and sleepy around 3, but not freely choose to fall asleep at my desk. Simply because I acted on my desire to take a nap, it doesn't mean that I freely chose to do so, because I didn't really want to fall asleep at my desk. I wanted to stay awake, but I had a desire to nap as well. And this is where we kind of get into the questions of Frankfurt's volitions, and the second-order desires might solve a problem like this. Therefore, it seems that some desires that we act on without impediment are not really free. Conversely, it seems that sometimes we face impediments to our actions, but are still free in taking them. Remember that Hobbes' view of the classical compatibilist says that you have to be able to act on your desires without impediment. Well, if you face impediments to your actions, but we still think you're free, then once again, Hobbes is wrong, but from the other direction. It may be very hard for someone to advocate for and get a piece of legislation passed. It might take years, time, money, and a lot of work, and you might face a lot of impediments along the way. But if someone makes the choice to try to get that piece of legislation passed, the fact that it is hard, or the fact that they faced impediments, does not seem to mean that that action was not freely chosen. In fact, trying again and again after failing and facing hurdles and impediments and things put in your way seems to make an action more freely chosen, not less. Next up, so if you are unconvinced by the classical compatibilist for those reasons, you might take a step up to the hierarchical compatibilist, or Frankfurt. Hierarchical compatibilists claim that an action is free if your first-order desires to take that action mesh with your higher-order desires to take that action. You both want to do it, and you want to do it. Your higher-order desires align with your first-order desires. Check out my video on first and second-order desires for more on that. However, there are some issues with this position as well. Imagine that Milo is a kleptomaniac that has very strong first-order desires to steal things, but because of a second-order desire to not want to steal, he does not. For Milo, he has zero first-order desires to not steal. He doesn't actually want to not steal. He really, really, really wants to steal, but he wants to be the kind of person that doesn't want to steal. And so he doesn't go about stealing. His second-order desire is out of sync with his only first-order desire, which is to steal. He doesn't have a competing first-order desire to not steal. He doesn't really want to not steal. He wants to be the kind of person that doesn't want to steal. And so Milo would always have a first-order desire to steal, but the ability to resist that first-order desire seems praiseworthy. It seems wrong to claim that Milo does not get moral credit for not stealing because he didn't act freely. In fact, he seems to deserve more moral credit because he acted strongly against his first-order desires. But for Frankfurt, such an action is not free, since Milo doesn't have a first-order desire not to steal. He simply has this second-order desire to broadly be a better person, or be the kind of person that doesn't desire to steal. Additionally, we might be concerned second-order desires that disagree. If someone can have a first-order desire to both take and not take a drug, then surely someone can have disagreeing second-order desires as well, such as a second-order desire to not take a drug and a second-order desire to take a drug. At this point, which action would be freely chosen if you have two competing first-order desires and two competing second-order desires? Would either action be free since they're both in line with one first and one second-order desire? Or would neither action be free since they're both out of line with at least one first and one second-order desire? It seems that people could have this opinion. If you can have competing first-order desires, there doesn't seem to be a reason you couldn't have competing second-order desires. And if those exist, then we have a bit of an issue for Frankfurt's position. It seems like he's just taken the problem and he's upped it a level. And as long as there can be the same problems and disagreements and competition at that level, you're going to have the same problems resurfacing, just at a higher level of hierarchy. Before leaving Frankfurt, it's also worthwhile to offer a response to the Jones and Black example, which claims that someone can be free even if they could not do otherwise. Check out the previous video for a full explanation of that thought experiment. One response from the incompatibilist could be to argue that there is a difference between being able to act other than you do and being able to choose to act other than you do. That the choice is what's free. The actual action being impeded doesn't bear on the freedom of the choice. So imagine that Jones chooses not to stab Taylor. Then Black convinces him to change his mind. It seems that the initial act of choosing to not stab Taylor was done freely. There was a free action in there. The act of choosing not to stab Taylor. And then the being manipulated into stabbing Taylor was in fact the thing that was not free. He may not have been able to act other than he did, but he could choose other than he did. If we reconstruct the example so that Black could in fact prevent Jones's mind from even choosing not to stab Taylor, the example loses its intuitive punch. If Jones could not even in his mind think of not stabbing Taylor, then his choice to stab him doesn't seem free. But if Black's intervention is after the choice is made, then Jones could have chosen otherwise, even if he could not have acted otherwise. Another way to think of this is if someone chooses to go and rob a bank, but gets caught by the cops before they can actually carry out the action. And the cops have great coercive force of not letting you carry out your action by taking you to jail. Then they still seem morally responsible for the choice, even if they could not have acted otherwise in their choice to rob a bank. They may not have been able to act otherwise. They were not robbing the bank regardless. Either the cops were going to catch them or they were going to choose not to rob it. But they could have chosen otherwise. They could have chosen not to try to rob the bank. And so just because the police caught them, it does not mean that their choice to rob a bank or to not rob a bank was determined in some way. Their choice happened before the police caught them. It happened before, and Jones's choice whether or not to kill Taylor happened before Black's intervention. If the police were in those people's minds and forcing them to choose something, then it wouldn't be free. But we wouldn't think it would be free, and they wouldn't have the ability to do otherwise. But because they could choose otherwise, even if they were prevented from acting otherwise, then we think that they have the ability to do otherwise, and it's a free action. So this example kind of helps us realign the idea of a free action with the ability to do otherwise from the incompatibilist perspective. The final version of compatibilism that we covered in the last video was Susan Wolfe's reason compatibilism, that claimed actions could be free if our desires were based in true and good reasons. Incompatibilists might be concerned with this view for a range of reasons. It seems that this significantly limits the scope of individuals who could be free. Many people believe things that are false or base their actions on false claims. For example, most religions are mutually exclusive, both factually and morally, yet many people base their many actions on their religious beliefs. If religions are mutually exclusive, at most, one group of these people is right and therefore free, and the vast majority of the population of the world cannot be free. Only the people who follow the right religion are in any way free, which seems really concerning. Everyone else is not. This could go even further if you were looking at claims about general truth about the world, like whether or not the world is round or flat. If someone's basing their actions on false scientific beliefs that will be proven true, or proven false rather, hundreds of years later, according to Wolfe, they're not free because they're not based in the true and the good. But that not only disqualifies the vast majority of current humans from being free, but the vast majority of humans throughout all of time from being free. It seems like the class of people that are really free is very, very small under Wolfe's view. And therefore, the class of people that are morally responsible is very, very small, which we might be pretty concerned about as saying that you're not really saying that free will exists because there's about 2 people that can be free. We might also push on this claim that one can be free if one is manipulated into acting for true and good reasons. You might say that you could be acting based on true and good reasons, but still not be free. Take this example. It seems that if I threaten to kill your family unless you give me money, you could be acting on true reasons. Your family will certainly die if you don't give me that money. And good reasons. It is morally good to save your family's lives. And your own first-order desires. You would rather give up the money than lose your family. However, few would claim that someone whose family is being held hostage is acting freely. In fact, that's often the paragon example of not acting freely. And yet, according to Wolfe, you're acting on true, good, first-order desires, so you must be free. This seems concerning. So, returning to our original trilemma. Over the course of this series, we've seen 6 different positions on free will. They're all live positions with active defenders in philosophy, and the answers have real impacts on our world. Whether or not certain people have real moral responsibility for their actions matters. If someone was ordered to commit a war crime, were they really free? If they were threatened that their family might die, unless they commit a war crime, are they really free? If they simply were ordered and threatened with jail, if they didn't commit a crime, a war crime, are they really free? If they simply were threatened with being kicked out of the army or being punished if they didn't commit a war crime, are they really free? Those are real questions that have real ethical impacts and implications. Where you draw that line on what makes someone free or morally responsible really does matter. And yet, we do still have active disagreement about what makes someone free or if someone can even be free. What do you think? Does free will exist? What does it mean to be free? Which of these 6 positions, for you, is the most persuasive? Give me your answers in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching this series. Hit Hit subscribe, hit that notification bell if you want to see more videos like this and you want to be updated whenever we post. Watch this video and more here at Carneades.org, and stay skeptical, everybody.